The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of the steps involved in submitting an item to Sheffield Hallam University's evaluation repository, which showcases the evaluation activities that staff members and students carry out within the institution. Staff and students involved in conducting evaluations at Sheffield Hallam have an active role in supporting others to understand the evidence and its implications, such as by disseminating the evidence and the findings. Submitting evaluation items to this repository will help others at Sheffield Hallam and across the sector to use the learning for their own practice. It also provides an opportunity for authors to gain greater recognition and visibility for their work, with evaluation items appearing on scholarly indexes such as Google Scholar. Before submitting, we encourage authors to look at the guidance available on the repository website, and if they have not already done so, arrange to speak with a member of STEER by contacting us at evaluationrepository@shu.ac.uk. This will provide an opportunity to ask any questions about the repository and to clarify any expectations about the submission process. There are no restrictions on the types of evaluation items that are accepted for the repository, so it could be an evaluation report, a briefing, or perhaps something creative. It is important, however, that the evaluation is communicated in a way that is credible and clear for audiences so that they can assess the evidence and determine whether it can inform their own practice. As a minimum, audiences should be able to understand what has been undertaken in each evaluation, why this happened, and what change is being attributed to the initiative, in addition to evidence to back any claims that are made. Each submission to the repository will be reviewed to ensure that it meets a set of expectations relating to evaluation practices and reporting, which are in place to ensure that the evidence base on the repository is relatively robust and informative. These expectations are not lengthy, and they are designed to establish good practice in the conduct of evaluation. More information is given about this later in the video. Once authors are ready to submit, they are required to outline the key details of the evaluation and to upload any relevant outputs by submitting an online form. Within the form, authors are asked to provide information such as the title and the authors involved in the evaluation, the key terms that define it, the abstract, specifying whether it relates to a specific stage of the student life cycle, and specifying the type of impact evaluation that it is, which relates to what claims are being made in the evaluation. For example, is it providing a narrative about why an initiative is being carried out and why it might be effective? Or has it collected evidence which reports that there have been changes in outcomes for those receiving an initiative? And at the end of the form, any relevant documentation and outputs, such as a report, should be uploaded. Once a submission has been made, it will initially be screened to ensure that the submission is broadly suitable for inclusion. The author of the evaluation must be a staff member or student at Sheffield Hallam University or Sheffield Students' Union. Items must only be submitted which are the work of the author. It must be written in English. The evaluation, either in its current phase or entirety, must have been completed, and the evaluation item must not have been published elsewhere. Following the initial screening, the content of the submission will be checked more thoroughly by a reviewer, who will be a staff member at the university who is experienced in conducting evaluations. Within the submission and any uploaded outputs, it should be clear what is being evaluated, including the issue that's being addressed and the reasons why the initiative is needed. The goals that the initiative is trying to achieve and the changes or the outcomes that are anticipated should be outlined, as well as a description of what is being done to achieve those changes. Reference should be made to existing evidence that has been used to inform the evaluation and to show why the intended changes are realistic and feasible. If there is an absence of existing evidence, authors will need to outline their assumptions about how they believe the initiative will work and how the changes will happen. The key evaluation questions that the evaluation is attempting to answer should be specified. For example, is it focused on how an initiative has been implemented? Is it focused on the changes that result from the initiative? Is it both of these, or is it something else? Details should be provided about the methodology, which is the justification for the methods used to carry out the evaluation. Authors should clearly communicate the data collection methods, the analytical approach, and the data sources used in the evaluation, and it should be sufficiently detailed to allow others to understand what has taken place and why these decisions were made. There should also be a description provided of the procedures in place for addressing ethical considerations. For example, consent, right to withdraw, incentives, privacy, and disclosure. Even if you didn't collect data from participants as part of the evaluation and instead used evidence from elsewhere, you still need to demonstrate that ethical issues have been addressed, such as in the transparency of procedures and the decisions that you made. Finally, somewhere in the documentation or the output, there should be acknowledgement of any limitations relating to the evaluation methodology and the approach taken. The findings should provide the author's interpretation of the evidence that they've analysed, and all of the evaluation questions for the evaluation project should be addressed. For example, if one of the evaluation questions was about how an initiative contributes to its intended outcomes, then explain why they were met or not met. The findings need to be supported by the evidence presented and cover both the expected and the unexpected results. If the evaluation has shown that something hasn't worked, or if the evidence is inconclusive, these findings must be shared as they provide valuable points of learning, and it will ensure that audiences have access to all the evidence that is available. Finally, the conclusions that you are making should be appropriate to the strength of evidence that has been generated. So make sure the claims are appropriate and realistic. If you have claimed data on impact, it might be possible to indicate that your initiative is associated with better outcomes for those who took part, but you won't be able to claim that the initiative caused this improvement unless you have used specific, robust research designs that take into account other potential explanations and that involve a control or a comparison group. Conclusions should be reasonable, valid, and supported by the evidence presented, and be connected to the evaluation findings. It may be helpful to make recommendations that are linked back to the original issue that was being addressed. For example, how the initiative could be improved, or how it could continue in the future. The reviewer will follow a set of guidelines based around these evaluative expectations, and the author will be notified of the outcome by email. If the reviewer identifies any areas where an expectation has not been met, or if any aspects of the submission are unclear, the author will have the opportunity to resubmit or to provide further information. If there is disagreement about the outcome, the reviewer and the author will have the option to escalate the review to the head of research and evaluation to resolve the matter. If the submission is accepted, the item will be uploaded onto the evaluation repository, and the author will be notified by email when this has happened. At this point, the evaluation will have a unique page on the site that will display its details, and it will appear on external scholarly indexes, which will hopefully help audiences use the learning for their own practice, provide greater visibility, awareness, and take-up of what works in different contexts, and raise the profile of the work that has been undertaken. That is the end of the video on the submission process, so please get in contact with us at evaluation repository at shu.ac.uk if you have any questions about the evaluation repository in general or specifically about the submission process.